Hello Plottr Otters, and welcome back to another video tutorial all about our Plottr templates. This is part 2 of our Derek Murphy's 24 chapter novel outline template. In part 1, I went over the template itself in very thorough detail concerning what you should expect to do and what needs to happen within each chapter. Now in part 2, what we're going to do is actually analyze book 1 of the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. But what you'll find is that I did a little something different compared from part 1 to part 2. In part 1, you actually have a lot more instruction when it comes to what should be happening within the scene card. But just for the sake of brevity, since you already watched that in part 1, I just took a little snippet of what you need to do in here. And then in blue, we have the Harry Potter analysis. So you will see that throughout all of these scene cards as we go through all of this. So let's get started. In part 1, I went over all of the different acts or the 4-part pacing that we're doing. So Act 1, Hero and Ordinary World is what we'll start with. Act 2A and Act 2B, that's basically Act 2 broken up in the middle. So we'll go over those as well, and then we'll follow it up with Act 3. So we are going to jump right into Act 1, Hero and Ordinary World. Really bad day, because it ends up being one. So in this, as we discussed in the first video, a really bad day encompasses the ordinary world, empathy, conflict, flaw and lack, problem, want, need. You're doing a lot here when you're setting this up. So the way in which this happens in Harry Potter is that his ordinary world is introduced. First, he loses his parents. Then he is left on the doorstep of his aunt and uncle, the Dursleys. Harry becomes servant and scapegoat within the Dursley household, never truly welcomed into their world and always feeling so different. Harry finally gets to go to one of Dudley's birthday parties and some real fun begins. But we see within that interaction and that lead up to the birthday party that not everything is great within the Dursley home. He's really treated badly. And this day ends up being kind of great in the beginning, but due to the events of what happened at this party, not so great later. Ordinary world notes. So the first act sets up the protagonist in their ordinary, mundane environment. So we're introduced to several things in chapter 1. The entire setup is important, even though Harry only shows up at the very end. We get a thorough idea of who the Dursleys are and their relationship to Harry by the end of chapter 1. And we come to realize very quickly the kind of family Harry is being left to, why he is being left there, and the community he is involuntarily leaving, which is actually a bit of a nod to the heroine's journey in the way he loses his power just as a baby by being taken out of that community without choice in the matter and just left on the Dursleys' doorstep. Chapter 2 gives us a look at the ordinary world that Harry actually operates within. Very invisible to the Dursleys, although he is very much a thorn in their side that they would like to forget. Something peculiar happens in chapter 2. So something unique or strange needs to occur, and it's kind of been dismissed. So Harry is looking at a large snake, as one does when at the zoo, when it suddenly winks at him. He talks to it for a moment, but then Dudley hits him, and somehow the glass on the snake's enclosure disappears. Mr. Dursley blames Harry, and he is banished to the cupboard beneath the stairs yet again. This is his prison, his home. It's where they just literally brush Harry under the door or under the stairs, and they attempt to forget about him. Harry clearly has powers, but he doesn't know it or understand it. He also has no control over them, and it gets him into a lot of trouble. So even more peculiar is that letters start arriving for Harry when he never usually gets any mail. So Uncle Vernon destroys them, but they just keep coming. Chapter 3, Grasping at Straws. By the way, these chapters shift. They don't exactly fit within the exact chapters of Harry Potter, but you can label things as chapter 3. You can label them as beats. You could label them as scenes, however you need to in order to make this work. But for the sake of this template, these are labeled as chapters, just to help you guys know what should or could be happening within each chapter. So in this one, we're trying to regain control of the ordinary world, but setbacks mount. For the Dursleys, that is. Uncle Vernon is trying to regain control, and Harry just wants the letters that keep coming for him. After a series of hilarious events in which Uncle Vernon succeeds for a time, they head off to a little shack in the middle of a storm where at least no letters can be delivered to Harry, or so the Dursleys think. Chapter 4, Call to Adventure. Now, something extraordinarily different happens they can't ignore, and this is a major setback. At the stroke of 12, or the moment Harry turns 11, a giant man named Hagrid bangs on the door and breaks in. He gives Harry his first birthday cake, cooks sausages, and basically makes himself at home. Hagrid tells Harry he is a wizard, and Harry finally gets a chance to read the letter accepting him into Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He learns how his parents really died, who Voldemort is, and how Voldemort gave him that scar. Harry is apparently very well known within the wizarding world, the boy who lived. He's gone from an obscure boy living in the cupboard under the stairs to one of the most famous wizards of all time, and he knows nothing about that birthright, his potential friends, or his potential enemies. So this call to adventure is twofold, in my humble opinion, as I analyze this. It's this call to adventure where it's introducing this new world that he now gets to be a part of, and he has a choice to accept that or reject that. But also on an internal level, it's this call to you being the chosen one, because that is exactly what Harry is. So we're looking at a very well-used trope here that can be used in many different ways, but it's that chosen one trope. And how does Harry handle it? Does he accept it? Does he fight against it? Does he really understand what it means? And you'll see that mounting throughout the series, actually, as he begins to understand the part that he plays in eventually defeating Voldemort. So this is the A story external inciting incident notes, if you will. So in most books, this inciting incident should happen in the first few chapters. And for Harry, this inciting incident is when Hagrid drops the Wizarding World bombshell. For any of you newbies coming in and going, what in the world is an inciting incident? It's a moment that basically invites your protagonist on a journey. It disrupts the pattern. It's a pattern interrupt. And it means that they usually are thrown headfirst into adventure, into a conflict, into solving a problem. Most of the time they don't choose to accept it. Other times they willingly do, but with reservations. It just really depends on the type of story that you are writing. Chapter 5 is Head in the Sand. The new interrupts the old and causes conflict, reveals dissatisfaction with the ordinary. The Dursleys are really the ones who resist Harry's call to adventure, that external call of joining the wizarding world. And they stick with denial about his invitation to attend Hogwarts. Harry now knows he is a wizard. With every new spell Hagrid performs, the way the folks in the Leaky Cauldron respond to him, and the introduction to Diagon Alley, where the magical community does all their shopping, he realizes he ain't in Kansas anymore, Toto. So despite these many magical interactions, the month leading up to his attendance at Hogwarts is torture, and he receives little help and support from the Dursleys. So dissatisfaction abounds with the ordinary world. And this idea that Harry is possibly more and possibly famous, it's not really something he looks at, so he really does bury his head in the sand on that aspect of the call to adventure. Pull out the rug. Trying to fix ordinary world problems while resisting the lure of the supernatural. In this story's case particularly, Harry is not resisting the external call, but he does dismiss the internal one, the one where it's fame, where it's destiny, where he feels that tug of maybe there is more for me to be doing, that notoriety. Harry can hardly believe he is special in any way that matters, yet there is no denying the world he is now part of or the reminders of his past, importance of his future role in the wizarding world. For example, Hagrid needs to retrieve something at the bank, along with Harry's money. This is a moment that foreshadows the main conflict of the story and the way in which Harry will become quite the reluctant hero. The wand that chooses Harry is brother to the wand that gave him his scar, another link to the villain Voldemort. All of these links to Voldemort keep cropping up. They hint at Harry's destiny, laying the groundwork for what is to come. Please always sprinkle and foreshadow things before you bring them out of your magician's hat, so to speak. The bank is robbed a day after Hagrid and Harry were there to retrieve something important on Dumbledore's orders. So all of these things are happening within a very specific time period that are making it very difficult for Harry to ignore something's a little off. Even though I'm super excited about the idea of this magical community, a few things are happening that are a little bit off. So here's our internal first plot point notes. This is story B. Story A is more of the external. Story B is the internal. So this is your protagonist stepping off the cliff or going into the rabbit hole. The protagonist accepts the call, whether voluntary or involuntary. Harry not only follows Hagrid into the unknown and preps for his stay at Hogwarts, but he literally steps off a platform and onto another, platform 9 3/4, just to get to Hogwarts. His fear of the unknown and the possibility that he might miss the train hits hard, but the Weasleys show up to save the day and help him get on the right one. There are beautiful symbols of change, such as the train taking Harry from his ordinary world to his new world, as well as his increasing internal acceptance that he is part of something special, even though he may not realize that he is actually the part that is special. So it's internally coming to terms with that. All right. Enemies and allies. Explore the new world, meet characters, find their place and role, and introduce all main characters. Ron, Hermione, the Weasley twins, and even a central antagonist, Malfoy, they're all introduced as Harry accepts his call and heads to Hogwarts. By the end of the train ride, we have most of the characters laid out with some fun interactions that give us insight into personalities and roles being played. So upon arrival at Hogwarts, the first years are led to an area where they wait for their sorting ceremony to take place. Ghosts come out of the woodwork, literally, and make their presence known. Harry worries that this is all a mistake and the sorting hat won't place him at all, that he might be sent home. Fortunately, Harry is placed in Gryffindor along with Ron and Hermione, and the first few days are all about Harry trying to get used to being the famous Harry Potter. The unwanted attention as he navigates his new world is difficult for him to process. A few more characters are also introduced as well throughout this process as he gets to know his place in the wizarding world and also at Hogwarts. So Snape, along with Draco, will be an enduring thorn in Harry's side. Hagrid, Dumbledore, and Professor McGonagall are in some ways guides to Harry at different times, although McGonagall is more authoritarian in nature, while Dumbledore gives Harry room to explore and make a few mistakes. Argus Filch and his cat, Mrs. Norris, are low-level antagonists, patrolling the halls and cracking down on students, and boy, are they a pain. All right, games and trials. Struggle to belong, frustration and doubt, trials and challenges, the promise of the premise. We get some detailed examples of training from Harry's first week of classes, where he learns about transfiguration and the dark arts. Potions is especially challenging since Snape hates him and seeks to tear Harry down at every turn. This is the first interaction with Snape and Harry, where we see some of those enemies and allies, but this is kind of a trial where we're getting the layout of the land and seeing that Snape, although an ally, is also really frustrating antagonist. We learn the layout of the castle, or rather the way in which you can easily be lost in it, as well as the role of the ghosts and the resident tattletale Mrs. Norris, Argus Filch's cat. That little stinker. Alrighty, earning respect. Small victory as lead proves capable. Fun and games, begrudging acceptance. Harry has a small victory with his broomstick. He's a natural at flying. During their flying lessons, Malfoy and Neville have an altercation, and Harry swoops in to retrieve Neville's Remembrall, but Malfoy flies high and launches it into the air. Harry uses some sweet skills to retrieve it and impresses McGonagall so much that she takes him to Oliver Wood, the eventual captain of the Quidditch team. And tells him she has found him the new seeker for Gryffindor House. So these are really critical moments where your character is first earning that respect within a scenario where they are a bit of an unknown, not in the sense that no one knew who Harry Potter was, as in his name, but they really don't know what he is capable of or the type of person he is going to be. And we see him having some really nice little victories here that are, some tries, some fails, some victories, some achievements that are just helping him establish who he is here. And he's finding his place. So here's our story A, external first battle or first pinch point. This is where that first major interaction with the antagonist or the forces of evil occur. Now, I would not necessarily call Malfoy a huge force of evil. He's more of a very sad, misunderstood product of his parents. But it is a major interaction with him and kind of one of their first conflicts. Harry is still high on his most recent victory as the youngest seeker, but Malfoy challenges Harry to a wizard's duel. Ron accepts on Harry's behalf before Harry even knows what a wizard's duel is. But the challenge was a setup by Malfoy, hoping to get Harry caught wandering the halls of the school after hours. He really wants Harry expelled. Harry and his friends are chased by Mrs. Norris and Filch, who were obviously tipped off by Malfoy. They stumble, sorry, my editor brain kicked in. They stumble into the forbidden corridor and find a three-headed dog guarding a trapdoor. Harry surmises that the creature is guarding what Hagrid retrieved from Gringotts Bank. So we've got our first battle, our first pinch point. We are hitting on Malfoy, but we are also running into the main conflict where they're also going to be facing another antagonist, which is Voldemort. And so Harry is starting to put some pieces together that are really important for solving this problem. Forces of evil. Stakes are raised, antagonists revealed. Professor Quirrell warns the school that a troll is loose, and he promptly passes out. Harry and Ron seek out Hermione to warn her and see Snape slinking off. They accidentally lock the troll inside the girls' bathroom and race back to save Hermione after realizing their mistake. Ron and Harry work together to distract the troll, and in a surprise twist, Ron succeeds in casting a spell, Wingardium Leviosa. The troll's club levitates and lands on its head, knocking it out. Victory through sheer dumb luck, as Professor McGonagall says in the movie. Not the book, by the way. But still, it's a victory. So they have a small victory against the antagonist and what's happening there. And they suspect it's Snape. Problem revealed. Surprise problem or situation demanding answers. Harry attempts to retrieve his Quidditch book from Snape, who is in the staff room having his leg mended by Filch. When Harry walks in, he hears Snape say, "How are you supposed to keep your eyes on all three heads at once?" Harry races back to Hermione and Ron and tells them that Snape is trying to get past the three-headed creature guarding the trapdoor, and they need to find out what that dog is guarding and why Snape is after it. Harry suspects Snape of setting the troll loose. So now they've got a really solidified problem, and they're coming to realize, okay, we're going to need to stop Snape because he's obviously up to nothing good. New information, vulnerable share, in or out. This is our truth and ultimatum. Harry's broom is out of control during his first Quidditch game, and Hermione realizes that Snape is casting a spell, using dark magic to unseat Harry. Hermione rushes to Harry's aid, knocking Professor Quirrell over in the process, and magically sets a fire next to Snape to stop him. Later on, Hagrid reveals that the creature, Fluffy, is his pet. Isn't that just a great name, by the way, for this three-headed monstrosity? I find it hilarious. Hagrid refuses to believe that Snape is after what's being guarded and tells Harry, Hermione, and Ron to stay out of it. After their discussion with Hagrid, they now know that a man named Nicholas Flamel is involved with the object being guarded by Fluffy, and they are committed to stopping Snape. Now, here we're going to touch on some notes for our B story and the internal midpoint of our story. So about halfway through the novel marks the point where the protagonist decides to be proactive. So far, Harry's been very reactive to everything that has been going on around him and to the information that he has been collecting concerning the main conflict of the story. And now they decide to stop being a victim and vow to do whatever it takes to win. So Harry, Ron, and Hermione decide they're going to figure out who Nicholas Flamel is so they can find out what Fluffy is guarding and stop Professor Snape from stealing it. They decide to spend as much time as possible doing research in the library. And now we're in Act 2B, Bad Guys Close In. Self-realization or a discovery, victim to warrior. This is the mirror stage. Harry receives a mysterious Christmas present with an invisibility cloak that used to be his father's. That night, he takes the opportunity to go into the restricted section of the library and continue his search for information on Nicholas Flamel. But one of the books begins shrieking, and he almost gets caught by Filch and Snape, so he hides in a different room and discovers a mirror. The mirror reveals to him what his family looks like. He is so caught up in what he wants most, he temporarily forgets his original quest and plans to return that night with Ron to see his family. On the third night, Dumbledore explains what the mirror is and how so many have wasted away before it seeking that which they wanted most, rather than living for what they had, or before even recognizing that they already had it. So Dumbledore says it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. Remember that. Now, even though this scene is called the mirror stage, usually you don't actually literally have a mirror. It just so happens there was one in this book. So that was kind of a fun and interesting little coincidence there. Plan of attack. Plan of action to thwart the antagonist forces or overcome the main problem. After the Christmas break, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are back to figuring out who Nicholas Flamel is. Through a stroke of luck, Harry sees the name Nicholas Flamel on one of the wizard cards he collects. Now, Nicholas Flamel was Dumbledore's partner when they worked together in the field of alchemy. Hermione knows where to look for Flamel now. She grabs a book from her quarters and discovers that Nicholas was the only known creator of the Sorcerer's Stone, which can turn any object into gold. It can also create the elixir of life and make the drinker immortal. So they now know what Snape is trying to steal. Very exciting stuff. Okay, crucial role. Trusted with an important task. Snape is going to referee the next Quidditch game, and Harry fears that Snape will try to get rid of him again. Harry braves the odds stacked against him, knowing Dumbledore is in attendance, and he catches the snitch in record time. He even shoots past Snape to do it. Harry takes on the crucial role of winning the game, and now Gryffindor is in the lead for the House Cup. Not only that, Harry is still alive to stop Snape from stealing the Sorcerer's Stone. We're going to have some notes on a story. This is the external second battle or second pinch point. The antagonist defeats the protagonist forces or foreshadows what's at stake in the next major encounter. So the next major encounter happens between Snape and Professor Quirrell. After the game, Harry sees Snape sneaking off into the Forbidden Forest and follows him on his broom. He overhears Snape threatening Quirrell, asking him if he has figured out how to get past Fluffy yet. It's obvious Snape is threatening Quirrell, and Harry believes he is coercing him into helping Snape steal the Sorcerer's Stone. So Harry shares this with Ron and Hermione, and they come to the grim conclusion that Quirrell's spells must be keeping the stones safe. And if Quirrell can't stand up to Snape, then his defensive spells meant to help protect the stone are going to be jeopardized. Direct conflict. They execute the plan and come in direct conflict with the antagonist forces. Harry, Ron, and Hermione realize that Snape and several other professors have been tasked to protect the stone after Hermione sweet talks Hagrid into giving them more information. Snape has been figuring out each piece of the defensive puzzle, and they worry that he has found out how to get past all of the defenses put in place. So they ask Hagrid if anyone else knows how to get past Fluffy, and he claims they don't. They discovered that Hagrid has a dragon egg, though, and that a mysterious stranger gave it to him. While this doesn't leave them in dire straits just yet, it eventually will. And at the moment, they are so preoccupied with how to help Hagrid get rid of his dragon before it gets too big to handle that they kind of get a little sidetracked when it comes to what they're doing with Snape and trying to stop him from getting the Sorcerer's Stone. The plan goes horribly wrong, faulty information or assumption, consequences. Malfoy finds out about Hagrid's dragon and hangs it over their heads, especially after Ron gets bitten on the hand while trying to help Hagrid take care of it. Malfoy knows too much, having found a note from Charlie, Ron's brother, about the meeting to hand off the dragon. The friends have a small victory when Malfoy is caught in the tower late at night, given detention and taken away by Professor McGonagall. And they get the dragon sent off safely. Unfortunately, they forget the invisibility cloak, and Filch meets them at the bottom of the stairs. They've been caught. They are massively depressed at how they let their house down and lost the respect of their peers and their station among the house itself. The entire school hates them, and they still have detention with Filch. Shocking revelation. The antagonist's full plan or true identity is revealed. Stakes are raised, guilt and anger. Harry overhears Snape coercing Quirrell again, and this time Quirrell finally agrees. Now Snape knows how to get past Quirrell's protective spells guarding the Sorcerer's Stone. Harry talks to Ron and Hermione about it, but they say that at least Fluffy is still there. There's no way to get past him, yet they still worry that Snape has somehow figured it out. So the true identity of who they are fighting is not yet revealed, but the plan seems to be unfolding. They're seeing that Snape is now really figuring out every defensive spell and how to get past them, and so they're starting to worry. This B story internal second plot point. The plan failed, the secret weapon backfired, the worst has happened, the antagonist has won. Internally, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are smarting from their latest setback. Letting down their house and losing Gryffindor 150 points has made it impossible for them to win the House Cup. They become social pariahs within the school, and that sense of belonging Harry has been seeking is definitely threatened. The invisibility cloak that was meant to help them succeed is more of a symbol now of how far they have fallen and how invisible they wish they could be in this moment. Now we are in Act 3, Defeat and Victory, Giving Up. Lead loses confidence. The forces are too great. What they want is unattainable. Harry ignores the fact that Snape has now coerced Quirrell into giving up his secrets. He decides they have done enough damage to their house and themselves. In this instance, they made mistakes and underestimated Filch. They feel the detention they are about to experience is something they definitely deserve, but another reason for this debilitating sense of defeat is the thought that no one will believe their theory concerning Snape and the Sorcerer's Stone. So they're giving up. They're going to focus on something else. Fortunately, we have the pep talk moment. Encouragement from an ally, vulnerable sharing, inclusion, what's at stake, what is the choice they make after. During detention, Harry locates a fallen unicorn as well as a creature drinking its blood. The centaur who chases the creature off takes Harry to safety, but not before explaining that unicorn blood is meant to keep someone from the brink of death, but barely, and it comes at a terrible price. Harry wonders who would do such a thing until the centaur reminds him of what is being guarded in Hogwarts. What has the power to offer someone eternal life? And Harry soon realizes that Voldemort is the one who is truly after the stone. The centaur hints Harry will die at the hands of Voldemort, just as the stars have foretold. Which isn't much of a pep talk if you're thinking about it. But this isn't just about Snape getting hold of the stone and living forever at this point. The stakes that the centaur introduces in this pep talk are really meant to get him moving and recognizing that if Snape wins and Voldemort wins, Harry's dead meat. So this is now about preventing one of the most dangerous and feared wizards from returning and becoming immortal. It's about stopping the wizard who killed Harry's parents from killing the people he loves. There's no way Harry can turn a blind eye to that. He must stop Voldemort. So due to these stakes rising, this is where he becomes more proactive again. He's not retreating from the action anymore. He's ready to take charge again. Deliberate choice to continue, even if slim chance of success. The next morning, Harry finds that his invisibility cloak has been returned to him with a note that says, just in case. It occurs to Harry how odd it was for a stranger to randomly offer up a dragon egg to Hagrid. And they find out that Hagrid did, in fact, share exactly how to calm Fluffy down and get past his defenses when he received that dragon egg from that stranger. There's nothing stopping Snape now from getting the stone for Voldemort. When they go to warn Dumbledore, Professor McGonagall informs them that Dumbledore received a message from the Ministry of Magic and left. It's the perfect time for Snape to sneak off and steal the stone. It's up to Harry, Ron, and Hermione to stop Snape once and for all. Story A, external final battle. Something big changes or impacts the protagonist. So these are the notes concerning this beat. The new information concerning Hagrid's encounter with that mysterious stranger and the fact that Dumbledore is no longer present at Hogwarts tips the scales and sends Harry, Ron, and Hermione headlong into the final battle. The main conflict of this entire story has been leading up to this moment, and no matter the risks, they are going to go for the Sorcerer's Stone. Ultimate defeat. Triumph of villain, all hope is lost, confront fatal flaw. Now this is a lot of information that happens as they come to this final battle. There are segments and pieces of it. So Harry initially decides to take on Snape all on his own. His fatal flaw is this idea that he must go it alone, since that is how he has always operated until landing at Hogwarts. But Ron and Hermione are there to remind him that he has them. Together, they are more powerful than they are apart. Harry, Ron, and Hermione experience a series of tries, fails, and tiny wins as they work through the defenses meant to keep the stone protected. Hermione uses her knowledge to defeat the plants. It takes teamwork to find the right key to get through the next obstacle, but Harry uses his skills as a seeker to do it. Together, they play wizard's chess, and Ron's prowess wins them the game, and then Hermione uses logic and her wit to solve the potion riddles. Harry is not quite defeated yet, but he has to break off his network of support by sending Hermione back through purple flames to help Ron and call in the cavalry. In this, we find the triumph of our villain, since Harry in many ways is on a heroine's journey rather than a hero's journey, and he is most powerful when he is fighting with friends alongside him and family by his side. Harry realizes Snape wasn't the culprit, it was Quirrell all along, and he has been waiting there for Harry, binding him with ropes and leaving him helpless. Unexpected victory. Secret weapon or ability, deep resolve, new understanding, unlikely ally. Remove glass shard or sacrifice. Harry knows the power of the mirror and what it actually shows you. He sees his reflection showing him the blood-red Philosopher's Stone, as well as him putting the stone in his own pocket. Instead of his desires being all about the family who has already passed, Harry is fighting for those who still live. Harry realizes that Voldemort is like a parasite, sharing Quirrell's body, and when Quirrell attacks him, somehow Harry is able to seriously wound him. Contact with Harry's skin is poisonous for Quirrell. Harry doesn't understand this new ability, but he takes full advantage of it, going on the offensive and smashing his hands against Quirrell's face to inflict more damage. But the pain in his own head from the scar is unbearable. Even though it nearly kills him, Harry holds on to Quirrell until he finally blacks out. Bittersweet reflection. Temporary victory, innocence saved, how far they've come. Harry wakes up in the hospital wing 3 days later with Dumbledore there to explain. Dumbledore had arrived in time to pull Quirrell off Harry before it was too late. The stone has now been destroyed after a heartfelt chat with Nicholas Flamel. Quirrell was unable to touch Harry due to his mother's sacrifice and the protection spell placed upon his skin as a result. In the end, Harry had not been truly alone fighting Voldemort. He'd had the power and love of his mother to keep him safe. Harry does well on his exams and is excited for another year at Hogwarts. All of his questions, for the most part, have been answered. He has Ron and Hermione in his life now and a place to go back to once the summer is over. Gryffindor wins the House Cup after being awarded points for the part they played in defeating Voldemort. The protagonist returns changed. They've won. Though if this is a series, it's probably temporary. And it definitely is temporary because this is a very long series. Harry has gained friends, community, a sense of identity, confidence, and a better understanding of his place in this world and what is most important. It's enough to sustain him as he returns to the ordinary world for an entire summer with the Dursleys. Harry's parting shot before saying goodbye to his friends is, they don't know we're not allowed to use magic at home. I'm going to have a lot of fun with Dudley this summer, which is just perfect. Fits his character perfectly. Now remember that this last card is optional, and if I were to fill it concerning Harry Potter's story, I would say that it's usually best to utilize it with this series, but Harry's going to face Voldemort again in book 2, as Dumbledore confirmed that Harry was unable to kill Voldemort completely. The issue of why Voldemort originally tried to kill Harry when he was a baby is not something Dumbledore is willing to discuss with Harry, so we also leave that for the series arc, but it was foreshadowed a bit with the Centaur when he talked about the stars and what they foretold. It wasn't totally clear to Harry, but it was hinted at that perhaps the stars foretold that Voldemort and Harry would fight, and only one of them would come out of that alive. Okay? So that is our 24 chapter summary of Harry Potter and the way in which it was analyzed. I hope that you guys enjoyed this summary and that it helped you understand a little bit more about the story analysis. This was more summary rather than deep dive, and we will have online courses and education that actually goes through the Harry Potter series in much more detail so that we can understand character development, character arcs, how to plot series. It's going to be very fun and exciting, so stay tuned for that. But hopefully this helped you to understand the 24 chapter novel outline template and also the first book in the Harry Potter series. Thank you so much, Plotter Otters. We'll see you in the next video.